I lived in a place where families had big lands and lots of money. They built huge houses and walls, making their own special worlds. People hardly talked to their neighbors unless something strange happened. I learned at home until I turned 7, but let's go back to when I was 4. At 4, I started remembering things from my early days. I thought all kids stayed on their family's land. When my parents went out, I'd ask to come along, but they always said no. They explained only grown-ups left home, and only in really urgent situations. But I wasn't lonely. I had lots of toys and games. My parents said I had a wild imagination. I got so into it that I started making friends out of our furniture, giving each piece a name. As time went on, my parents encouraged my imagination even more. Our house turned into a place filled with furniture. My dad, who liked to fix things, made some pieces himself. He told me how much he loved building stuff. I spent days talking to chairs and tables, each one with its own name, and that's how things were until I turned 7. So, for 3 years, I built strong connections with the furniture in my house. Arnold, the cushy sofa, felt like he moved with me as I read on him. Sophia, my bed, rocked me gently to sleep, sometimes humming softly. Claudio, the table, seemed to have a heartbeat when I rested my head on it. Theodore, a small chair, responded to me with humming sounds and strange vibrations. But my favorite was Gladys, the big, comfy couch. It felt like we shared the same breath. All the furniture was soft, warm, and alive in my world. Things changed fast. On my 7th birthday, a Monday, my parents were crafting a new piece of furniture as my gift. A woman got lost in town and somehow pushed through our sealed gates. She knocked on our door, and it startled me because I'd never heard anyone approach before. When I opened the door, her face turned to horror. She sniffed the air, gagged, then picked me up and started running. Now I'm about to turn 27, thinking about whether I should witness my parents' execution in the courtroom. Headlines called them worse than Karl Brandt, because by my 7th birthday, they had transformed 167 people. They weren't called murderers because no one died, but it was worse. 167 people turned into 71 pieces of furniture. That's 664 limbs, rearranged in ways no one should imagine. Some people think I'm a Buddhist. There's no furniture in my apartment. My mom and dad were doctors, and I'd have conversations with furniture. Ever found yourself chatting with furniture like I did in my story? What's the most unusual birthday present you've ever received? Remember to follow for more stories and discussions. What topics are you interested in? Let me know. It started off irritating. The old house would creak, power would blink out, and there was no heating. Just typical small-town Scotland stuff. Living here for 4 years, I got used to it. But things got worse. Power blackouts stretched for hours, sometimes days. The freezing winds rattled the house, and I gave up on lighting candles when the lights died. The air current slipped through the window cracks, snuffing out the flames, the usual routine. After a while, it got serious. Not that folks weren't trying to help, but nothing worked. Then, out of the blue, cars just quit. We were puzzled. A local blamed magnetic fields or something scientific. That wasn't the end, because driving after dark became risky. There was a curfew from 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. No cars allowed. I broke that rule a few times, but I learned my lesson fast. Winter hit hard, the toughest time of the year. Darkness crept in early, a thin layer of snow covering everything, turning it into a frozen land. Most folks fled south, especially to London, seeking refuge from the growing dangers. Power cuts happened more often, and the dropping temperatures worsened the situation, especially in the northern part of town. And there I was, all alone. Stubborn and arrogant, I brushed off the amber warning and stayed put. With plenty of food and warm clothes, I thought, I'll be just fine. God, was I wrong. It wasn't the creaking house or the loose shed door that bothered me. Something else gnawed at me, elusive and unsettling. Walking down the hall, the lights would just go out without warning. The boiler's hum beneath the staircase reassured me that electricity was fine, or so I thought. Then, just like that, the lights would flicker back on, but the house felt colder, shrouded in darkness. The windows allowed in less sunlight, and frost sealed the cracks, making it even chillier. As blackouts became more common, I resorted to lighting more candles, only to have them snuffed out along with the lights. It happened on a Sunday evening, the third time the lights went out that day. 3 hours in, and every candle I lit, every light I tried, just faded away. The more I bundled up in clothes and blankets, the colder I felt, like the chill was creeping into my bones. Eating, whether cooked or not, only made me hungrier. Making noise or talking, it all faded into a deathly silence. I started watching the clock every second, and an idea struck me. It was a dumb move, one I wish I hadn't made, but well, I did it. Snatching my car keys, I stepped out into the freezing wind. It bit at any skin it touched. Months had passed since I dared to face the dangerously cold air outside. Glancing at my home and the others around it, I saw each house bore scars from tree branches or debris the wind had flung around. Only my house bore a strange mark, a claw mark etched into the wooden walls. Oddly, I never heard any animal or the sound of claws scratching wood, and that's saying something considering the silence that engulfed me most of the time. Perplexed and bewildered, I fired up my car, grateful it still worked. Despite the thick snow, I steered my car onto the narrowest path. More speed, more power, and soon my car plowed through the snow, heading south. Glancing at the small digital clock on the dashboard, it read 8:33 p.m. Curfew loomed in 27 minutes, but I didn't care. I was the only one out there, so why bother with the rule? Why did you decide to venture outside despite the freezing conditions? How did you feel about the recurring blackouts and their strange effects on light and noise? What caught your attention as you glanced at the houses around yours? Why did you choose to ignore the curfew despite being aware of it? Curious for more gripping stories? Follow for regular updates and immerse yourself in new tales and adventures. I woke up to the sound of water dripping, echoing from the kitchen just a few steps away. The door stood wide open. The smell hit me again, as strong as when I went to sleep. The odor was so thick that my eyes watered and nausea set in. How long had I been stuck here? A week? Maybe a month? It felt like forever, but time didn't matter. No matter how long it had been, it wouldn't change when I could finally escape. Then, I heard a distant humming. It was him, on his way back. As he approached, the rusty barrel of his rifle scraped against the dirt. He hummed his usual tune, the one he always did when he caught fresh game, and I could hear the satisfaction in his deep, grumbling hum. His boots thudded on the ground with a slow and deliberate rhythm. He didn't seem to be in a hurry. The steps grew nearer, and I listened as he ascended the creaky wooden porch toward the old door. The door swung open slowly but with determination. The man, big and stocky, with hands and feet like tree trunks and more chest hair than a werewolf, moved deliberately toward the kitchen, still humming his eerie melody. In his hand, a lifeless rabbit dangled, its body hanging like a deflated balloon after a birthday party. He stepped into the room and a loud thud echoed as he dropped the rabbit onto a wooden board somewhere nearby. The realization hit me. I was starving. I couldn't remember the last time I had eaten. When the man emerged again, I mustered a faint whisper. Please, please, please give me something to eat. He looked at me, that creepy smile playing on his lips. A small chuckle escaped him, followed by silence. But you haven't even started performing for me today. I knew it meant no food for a while. Blisters on my hands and feet throbbed, and they looked infected. If only the chain weren't so strong, I might break free and make a run for it. The man returned to the kitchen, and I heard the refrigerator open and close. He walked out with a cold beer, slowly making his way to the couch in the room opposite me. Sitting down, he let out a huge sigh and turned on the television. Alone in the dark, hunger gnawed at me, driving me crazy. I tried over and over to slip my feet out of the chains, but they held tight around my bony ankles. Exhausted, I fell back into sleep, yearning for it all to be over. After a few minutes, I hear him stomping up a staircase, possibly dragging something behind him. He slams a door, and the familiar sound of a lock echoes. Making his way over, he wears a crazed look on his blood-covered face. Holding what looks like a kitchen knife, he heads back to the kitchen and drops the weapon into the sink. The man reappears, blood still dripping from his beard, and approaches me with a whip in hand. Leaning over, I catch a whiff of alcohol on his breath. "Hungry?" he sneers. I give a small nod and he unfurls the whip. "You'll have to work for it," he declares, sending a shiver down my spine. "Whatever's coming, it won't be fun." "Dance for me," he orders, but confusion shows on my face. I have no idea what he means. "Dance for me now!" he roars. I stand up and awkwardly move my body. Calling it dancing would be a stretch. The man takes the whip, leans back, and looks ready to strike. In one swift motion, he lashes my feet, hitting the top of my right foot. I collapse, sobbing. He commands me to get up and continue, and I try my best to follow his orders. He keeps whipping my feet until I'm dancing as fast as I can. After about 5 minutes, I collapse from exhaustion. The man let out one last sinister chuckle and returned to the kitchen, wearing a wide smile. He fetched the lifeless rabbit and came back, gripping it with his large hands, one on its head and one below the neck. Pulling hard, the sickening sound of breaking bones and tearing flesh filled the air. The rabbit's head, now detached, rested in the man's right hand like he was holding a basketball. He dropped the head on the ground in front of me, saying, "Eat up." His cackling laugh echoed as he strolled back to the room with the television. Fear paralyzed me. The hunger was unbearable, but the sight of the decapitated rabbit almost killed my appetite. Almost. What I did next was unspeakable, and the mere thought of it makes me cringe. When I finished, I curled up on the floor and cried myself to sleep. Through the night, the man's chuckles persisted, accompanied by the sound of him munching on what seemed like rotten meat. I woke to the sound of dripping water from the kitchen a few feet away. The pungent smell hit me, making my eyes water, and nausea swept over me. How long had I been stuck here? A week? Maybe a month? It felt like an eternity, but time didn't matter. However long it had been wouldn't change when I could finally escape. How did the man's actions with the rabbit heighten the suspense in the story? What emotions did the protagonist experience when faced with the decapitated rabbit? What do you think drove the protagonist to do something unspeakable in their desperate situation? How does the chilling atmosphere contribute to the overall suspense in the narrative? What details in the story make you curious about the man's motives and the protagonist's fate? Hungry for more gripping tales? Follow for regular updates and immerse yourself in new stories and adventures.